Good morning all. Well, I keep saying good morning, but I mean, of course, what I mean by that is good afternoon. It's very good to see you and welcome to this workshop. What we're going to do today is, well, first of all, do you want to say your name and where you're from? Really quickly, just going around the table. We start with this table.
Johan Moijman, Rotterdam, the Netherlands.
That was really fast, well done.
I'm Charlie from the Touring National Theatre in Sweden.
Okay. Could you say if you work with marketing, education, or are curating, or?
All over again?
Yep.
I work for Rotterdam Festival. We do festival policy, but also collaborative audience development.
Right.
For the theatres and museums.
Oh, wow.
Yes, the Touring National Theatre. I work with organizational development.
Josephine, I work at the Norsk Folk Museum here in Oslo, Big Day, and I work with marketing and sponsorships and marketing both local and international.
My name is Sofia. I come from Catalonia, and I work. Yes. And I work in the culture department in audience department.
Jorunn, I come from Rennesøy kommune, municipality, and I'm more or less of a potato. Yeah. So I do everything from marketing to almost performing.
Good thing.
Almost.
Good thing. We're moving on to your next table this side.
To me?
Yes, you. Who are you?
I'm Wilfred. I'm French but living in Norway, and I'm actually working for cultural affairs in the city of Drammen, the capital of Norway.
Oh. There are many of those, just so we're not that different from Catalonia in that respect. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Maria. I'm from Finland, and I'm from the Theatre Academy in Helsinki, and I'm a lecturer of dramaturgy, so I would work in education.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Mira from Slovenia. I work at the National Fund for Cultural Activities, and I'm I'm a leader of a branch office. So I do everything in that area. I cover 6 municipalities, and I do work with amateur cultural people in that area. So everything from marketing to organization and everything.
Right. Yeah.
I'm Anya. I'm from Poland. I work for a museum. It's Muzeum Śląskie.
Yeah.
You should really visit it. I'm a promotion specialist.
My name is Tom. I work at Samson Youth Culture House in Kristiansand. I'm also what you call a potato. I work with AD education, marketing, education in different kind of settings. Yeah.
My name is Cynthia. I'm also from Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and I do marketing and audience research.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
I'm Susana. I come from Portugal. I work to a public institution related with the cultural ministry.
Yeah.
My name is Salome. I am also from Portugal, and I work in the ministry in definition of public service, cultural service.
Yes, I'm Anders. I'm from Copenhagen, from the Danish Design Museum. I'm also a potato, or a formidler, the word that nobody can translate. So I work with everything from...
You're a what?
Formidler.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, formidler. So I work with everything from learning to events, communication, tours, everything basically. Yes.
My name is Tamara. I'm also from Rotterdam. And I work at the research department, audience research.
Yeah. And I'm Maya. I'm from Stockholm, Sweden.
Yeah.
And I work at an organization called Musikrensen. And I work with counseling and development for musicians and opera singers. And yeah, that's about it.
Yes.
My name is Maria. I work at the Center for Contemporary Culture in Barcelona, and I work my department is audience development.
I am Neste from Slovenia as well as Neja, and basically I do the same things as she does, but in different town, my hometown. I'm head of the branch office of Public Fund of cultural activities that deals with people, amateurs in the cultural fields. So that's pretty much it.
That's interesting.
My name is Joanna. I'm from the municipality of Gislaved in Sweden, where I work as a culture coordinator.
Hey, I'm Annie. I'm also from Gislaved, and I'm working with young people in the culture.
I'm Nishi. I come from Arna, which is the UN city of Norway.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of.
You remember?
And we do a lot of activities, both as concerns the communication, the culture of communication, and also amateur culture. And it's marketing, collaborative audience, and I'm the rice, not the potato.
It is very useful for you.
Daiva. I'm from Lithuania's Kaunas, and I'm a curator at Kaunas 2022, European Capital of Cultural Innovation, because Kaunas is going to be is nominated to be a European Capital of Culture. And we are building a program for audience.
Hi, my name is Rui. I'm from Lisbon, and I work in a creative center connected to the National Ballet of Portugal.
Hi, Samuel, National Opera from Portugal, and I'm a member of the board, and I deal with all kinds of partnerships.
Hi, I'm Johanna. I'm from Gothenburg, Sweden. I work as an advisor at the Kulturivest, Västra Götalandsregionen. It's the culture administration of the western part of Sweden.
Hi, I'm Tina, and I work kind of in the same, but in a different region, Region Gävleborg. It's in the middle of Sweden, and I work with film, and especially for younger kids and youngsters.
Hi, I'm Satu. I'm a theatre director from Finland, and I work for the youth department in Finnish National Theatre.
Hi, I'm Sonja, also from Finland. We didn't know each other before. I'm working in Finnish National Opera and Ballet, and I'm working there as a producer in audience outreach.
Then you have a final table. Do you want to start with you?
Hi, my name is Louis. I'm from Gislaveds municipality in Sweden, and I'm a culture coordinator and working with non-profit organizations.
Hi, I'm Joakim. I'm from Härryda municipality, which is a mid-sized municipality just outside of Gothenburg, and I work as a head of culture. So yes, there are some marketing issues, among many other things.
Good morning, I'm Federico. I'm basically a consultant, so I mainly work with analysis and research.
Hi, I'm Anna. Together with Daiva, I work for Kaunas 2022, the European Capital of Culture program. For a couple of more months, I'm still the general director of the agency, and my responsibilities cover many fields within the organization, among them capacity building program for the cultural field.
My name is Vibeke. I'm from Oslo. I work for the Cultural Rucksack in Akershus County. My audience I have, because we have this program that we have to give the children from 6 till 18 visual art experience. Yeah, so I'm a producer, making sure they get the art in their school time.
And my name is Anna Lundberg. I'm working together with Charlie at the Swedish National Touring Theatre, and I am, according to this tag, a project manager. That's nice. And that means that I'm dealing with policies on equality and research.
Yay.
Yeah.
But what a crowd! I mean, like, you come in from so many different fields, and it's also quite interesting to see how many experiences that sits around each table as well. You're going to have a great day. So, because what we plan to do here is that we're going to You're going to have give 3 short speeches.
We should
talks.
introduce.
Yes. You know what? I put in this line later on to remind myself, you need to introduce yourself, and I'm running it. So, but now I have your help. This is really excellent. I'm Hilda Macy. I'm a daglig leder, which means I'm a general manager of TrAP, Transnational Arts Production. We are a production company with the aims to increase diversity in arts and culture in Norway. So we existed for 20 years, based on enthusiasm and some critical thinking as well. I have with me...
Yeah, I'm Cecilia and I work with Lida at TrAP. I work with outreach programs and communication, and then I'm in charge of this program, Keys to the City. So I've had the pleasure of developing that this year.
Yeah. And we made a friend.
Yeah, I'm a friend.
Thank you.
My name is Ellen Folstad. I'm a friend of TrAP. I am head of education at Public Art Norway, and used to work at the Art Museum Henjonsstad. So I'm pleased to meet you all. 2 of you, I think, didn't get, but...
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Johanna Velander. I'm the general manager of Theatre Virus, Helsinki-based, so from Finland. And we're a small organisation, so audience development is on everyone's table.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an interesting 2 days.
Yeah, excellent.
Hello, I'm Mirka from the same organisation, and I'm the program producer, so I produce all kind of events for our theatre.
Good. That's very good. Yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry.
So this is the outline for your 2 hours here. You've received this workbook, and it's and you will be able to trace this program in these pages. And what we'll initially do, we will talk. We give you an introduction that took twice the amount of time. That's that's the way it always happens. And then after Cecilia will introduce the key concepts of Keys to the City to you and describe what sort of conceptual groundwork that project comes out of. And then we'll give you 5 minutes to just ask yourself how you would implement those ideas in your own project. Then I'll talk somewhat enthusiastically about 3 cases that I find quite interesting, and there are good cases in outreach work that have led to an artistic, creative energy within the institution that they came out of. And I think that's actually something, well, I'll give you the details on that talk later. And then afterwards you will work in pairs, 2 and 2. And then you will start to develop the project that you want to develop further. And then we will give you, and then our newly made friend, we've given her the task of, to give you a reality check and see, talk about what possible, struggles, hurdles you might meet, what resistance you could, meet in your institutions. And afterwards you work in a group of 6. And then you start talking about presenting your projects and also talking about what, possible, resistance you might meet and how you can bypass that, how you can create solutions to the possible resistance you might meet, either within your institutions, which we know might be the toughest struggles we have, and sometimes on the outside, with the audiences, what kind of resistance they might have. And finally, we will regroup you so that in order to spread the ideas that's been developed on each table, we will up you and we will spread you so that you can give a quick recap of all the ideas that have been discussed in the room, just so that you can nick the ideas. You should feel free to nick any idea that you hear here today, because you can't copyright outreach work, because they will always change according to who you reach out to. So just feel free to steal whatever you come across, including ours. And after that, we say goodbye. See you in the bar, well, a bar somewhere. So that will be it.
Maybe we should add that if you have any questions along the way, then it's a very good time to ask them when we walk around, when you guys are all working in groups, because then we can get to discuss it in a smaller. Yeah.
We will try and read your facial expressions. So whenever you look a bit lost, we will try. This is my reminder in case I forgot to introduce myself. But yeah, I did. That was a very useful reminder, and I needed it. So then I'll give you the work.
Yeah.
Cecilia.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about Keys to the City. And actually, right now, we're experiencing a lot of interest in this project from both young people, cultural institutions, as well as individual artists. And we believe this interest is due to the fact that there's been a new shift in audience development. A shift from focusing mainly on ticket sales and creating single events to actually engaging with new audience groups and staying in contact with them with the goal of creating long-term relationships. More specifically, when it comes to our program, Keys to the City, it's a project with the aim of bridging the gap between cultural and arts organizations and groups that rarely visit them. With Keys to the City, we're adding a social component to audience development. And to create a sustainable bridge over this gap, we believe that one thing is particularly important. It's key, really, creating long-term sustainable relationships. And this leads me to 5 central points that we believe are tools in creating exactly that. In-reach, third space, creating ownership, mutually beneficial programs, and starting small scale. And these are all things I'm going to talk more about in this presentation. I'd like to talk about outreach to start with. In terms of the methodological approach in Keys to the City, or in general, people often talk about outreach, but actually the approach in Keys to the City is the opposite movement, with the so-called in-reach strategy. Instead of reaching out to an audience group from the cultural institution or the organization, we believe in actually starting with reaching into the community or the group of people we want to work with. We start in the areas where the target group has its daily life. We get to know them and their everyday life. And this is because we believe very strongly that in order to create social change or change in general, we have to first explore the audience groups or their communities and their own identity-defining cultural expressions. The point is to create relationships that can be the fundament for a later invitation into the institution. So this means that that's where the outreach part comes in. So we have to do the in-reach in order to actually do the outreach later on. An added bonus when we start by doing in-reach is that it has the potential to actually spread to the local community. And just like starting small and then spreading out by word of mouth, basically. And when it comes to identifying target groups for Keys to the City, we choose these based on the geography of Oslo. We believe that this is a key factor in the segregation of certain groups from the cultural institutions, but also the other way around, of course, from the cultural institutions segregation from certain groups. And actually, I'd like to add to this that it becomes even more and more prominent to focus on the geography when it comes to audience development, because in Oslo in particular, there's a tendency for cultural institutions to want to move towards the city center, which makes it even more important to focus on the whole geography of the city to reach new groups. And we've started the pilot version of our project in Tøyen, and we're focusing on young adults aged 15 to 25. The concept of our program is actually really simple. After doing extensive in-reach, we invite the target group and the cultural institutions for an evening of cultural speed dating in an informal setting at a third space in the local area. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about third space. Third space is a term used by an urban sociologist called Ray Oldenburg, and it describes a neutral space or setting in the local area, a place that's not either the workplace or the home. It could be a local cafe, for instance. This is very important as this location needs to be, for the first meeting, needs to be not intimidating. It needs to be inclusive in and by itself. And and here are some photos from our first speed dating sessions in Tøyen at an activity center in the local community. The next thing we believe is important in creating long-term relationships is ownership. Creating ownership of the project and the process for all the people involved. To give you an example of how we make sure our target group gains ownership of this program, I would like to show you all these posters, and they're also all around in the room. And they were created with senior students from a high school in the outskirts of Oslo. And we asked them what culture meant to them, and they got to all state in tweets, basically very short tweets, what it means to them. And in order to create ownership for the participating organizations, we make sure that they can bring the issues or the ideas that they want to talk to the young people about to cultural speed datings so that it all stays relevant to them. And this leads me to talking about a mutual beneficial program. A program that benefits both the cultural institutions and the audience groups involved. Now, I've talked about the first two phases of our program, one being the in-reach and research part, the second phase being the cultural speed dating or the meetings, but there's a third part that's really important here. And actually this phase is inspired by a program that I was part of developing in New York City called the Lower East Side Arts Jobs Training Program, also focused on bridging a gap, but between mainly young Latino youth in the area and then cultural and arts organizations. Basically it was to bridge the gap of gentrification, but it worked really, really well, this program, and actually it benefited everyone involved in several ways. And we are inspired by that in the third phase, where we're going to create training at the institutions. So in this way, the young people will get to actually work with some of the projects or ideas they've been part of developing through the speed dating sessions. So they will already feel ownership of these projects that they get to work with when we do the outreach. So in this way, the institutions will get a very important contribution to their organization. But at the same time, the young people will get very valuable real-life experience from working at cultural institutions. But not only that, they will actually get references that they can use moving forward, more long-term. And then there's another thing that I'd like to add to this, which is that we also believe in the importance, when we want to create a mutual relation, in actually paying the young adults to do the training, so they don't just work for free, so that it's an actual job for them to do this. And the last thing I'd like to mention is the importance of starting small scale and then letting it grow from there. Starting with small conversations during the in-reach, and then, because the danger of starting with too much in the beginning, or like wanting to do too much, is that it's just gonna make the whole project collapse, basically. So start small scale and build a solid fundament, and then let it grow from there. To summarize, the central ideas of this project are creating long-term relationships, having a phase where you do in-reach, creating meetings at a third space, and then making sure that there's a continuously mutual ownership of the project for everyone involved, and also making sure that it's a mutual beneficial program, so that everyone involved can actually see why they're doing this and why it's important to actually commit to this long term. And then, last but not least, starting small scale. So I just want to end this presentation by saying that the overall purpose, the overall goal for this project is to create the relations that we believe are very, very crucial in order to make sure that the cultural world in Norway actually reflects the society we live in, both in terms of audience groups, artists, and cultural workers.
Thank you. So now you'll start your practical work on page 2.
Can we ask questions?
Yes.
I have two questions. Can you be a little bit specific about how these conversations go?
Yep.
What are the subjects? And the other one is, how do you select the groups?
Well, the groups are selected based on the geography in Oslo, and then they're basically young people that we've found during our in-reach, just like by talking to schools, to local organizations, to stakeholders in the local communities, and then it's starting really small and then building from there, basically.
These are people that have some kind of interest.
Yeah, they are, but we also have the goal of actually trying to reach people who have the interest but don't know that it's possible to actually do this.
Okay.
That's very important. Okay. And then in terms of, what was your other question?
How does a conversation like that
Yeah.
start? What are the subjects? How do you...
So we have asked the cultural institutions to actually bring, if they have a certain project or an issue that they would like the young people's opinion on, or they're like just, to get some new input on, then they can bring that. But at the same time, some of the young people might have some questions about the cultural world. So they're very welcome to bring that. We want to create an informal setting where the conversation can basically just float. And then we've been doing it as speed dates, so it's like 5 minutes with each table, so that it's not like a very like stiff setting. It's just very like smooth and yeah. And we've had it once, and we're gonna have our next session in a couple of weeks. And yeah, we were very happy with how the first one went, but we hope for the next one that there's gonna be more people. But we're starting, small and then.
Also, there are questions on the table as well.
Yeah.
Asking them to help, and we ask them why you're here, and why did you come today, and then also what do you miss in culture, and how can you make that happen? How can you make that produce that? Do you add to one?
Yeah, I was just curious who participated from the company.
We have the National Museum.
Yeah.
Let's see if we remember.
We actually have a lot. We've had a lot of interest lately, so we've.
Let's say the speed date, for example.
Yeah.
Who participated?
So at the speed date was the national, the Norske Teater, the Norwegian theater. We had the Nationalmuseet, the National Museum. And then we had a local organization called Tøyen Unlimited, which is like an organization that works with local entrepreneurship, and they were very, very well. They know a lot of people in the area, so they're already like, just by being there, inviting a lot of young people in. And then we had
Akershus Kunstsenter.
Yeah, Akershus Kunstsenter.
Akershus Teater.
Yeah, another theater, and then Mediefabrikken, and then we have the Union for Young Artists too.
Yeah, and yeah, we will also have independent artists as well coming along. So.
Yeah, and we also wanted the goal is also to make sure that there's some kind of entertainment from some of the local artists, whichever along the
to make a balance, sort of.
Exactly.
A bit light.
Yeah, and it's very we believe in just making it very inclusive. And also, actually, what happened during the first session was that a lot of people came along just during the session because we made sure that the space we rented was visible. So the people could just walk in, and they actually did. So that was really.
So easily accessible.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's key.
That's a very impressive project. You standing on the outside, picking people in.
So the program in itself creates and develops, but also serves as a model. To copy, as you said.
Yeah.
So to go.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, are you ready to start talking to yourselves? There's a list of these key concepts on the bottom of this page. So,
we work with a real life case or
yeah, you can start describing what you want to do.
Okay.
What this inspires you to want to put into your own life. So, what ambitions does this? Intelligence.
Can you do it in English? And I can switch if we need.
So are you okay with moving on to the next one? Yeah. So I think that when I got to choose what to talk to you about, there's one subject that I find really important, and that's that whenever we do outreach work, we sometimes do it in order to be nice, to feel good about ourselves, which I think, in order to feel that we're good people, which I think is a spectacular waste of time. So, and I think that one of the reasons why we should be good at doing outreach work is that we can tap into a creative and artistic potential that is truly unique. And I've picked 2 examples from Norway that you might know, might not, and an example from South Africa that does that. The first example is a television series called Shame or Scum. I'm not sure if you've seen it. Yes. You know it? Yes. the surprise hit for a lot wider target group than it originally was made from. There was Mari Magnus, who was producer for it. She said in his lecture that the target group, the youngsters in Norway, were an audience that the National Broadcasting Agency were spectacularly bad at reaching. And she gave the example of one of the programmings that happens in the national television is slow TV, like you put a camera on the and the Coastal Express, and that's television for you for the next 7 days, which is a nightmare for a teenager. You know, it's like the intensity of what happens mentally in a teenager is like watching a boat for a week. What? So they thought that they had to do original work that was made for youngsters. I think what they did in this project is exceptionally really good, because what they did was to talk to people about what you need to see. Not what you want to see, but they had a lot of interviews asking them what you need. And the thing that they came up with was this. And especially there's one conversation, there's one research that Madame Neste did, and she spoke to this young girl in Drammen, a young Muslim girl, and she said that what I really need now is to see a young Muslim girl who's not a victim of anything, one's powerful and in control of her life, and that's so that came in, that was put into the centre of one of the characters is built out from that response. I think that the thing that is really I think that one thing that's quite bold about that show is that what it says is that young people, they need to talk about taboos. They live in a flow of information, but they nonetheless have strong taboos about certain issues and certain aspects, and they have a lot of fears. That going from childhood to being grown up in a world as dramatic as the one that they've seen on the screens. This is the first generation who lived online, and they lived online to pretty violent news flow. So they have quite huge, deep-seated concerns in terms of what sort of world they're actually going into, and they doubt themselves, and they doubt absolutely everyone else as well. And which is sort of being a teenager always been about. But it's that amplified by this flow of information that they live in. So what they need to see, what they have a real sort of emotional need to see, is that when you challenge your fears, you will become stronger and you will overcome them. So that's sort of real sort of emotional empowerment. And they took that, and then they placed that, and then they built characters creatively. They didn't just tell it, they showed it. It's good, classical storytelling, what it's all about. They took these concerns and they placed it in the heart of their production. And that's, and the fact that it was so spectacularly successful means that, they managed to achieve something that is artistically beautiful, and also, fill the need, that, also fill the need for a lot wider audience than the youngsters in Norway. Also, I saw an interview with youngsters in Turkey. They watched it, and especially were very interested in that character of Sana, and they had exactly the same, need to see a Muslim girl being something else than a victim. So Scum is actually an example of first going out, reaching out, and then using those experiences and making it into what you artistically produce. Secondly, I want to tell you about a library up at Teyen. We had a workshop there actually the last weekend, trying to take the art students out and trying to recruit new artists in the age of 10 years old. I'm not sure what we recruited them into, but it was a lot of enthusiasm anyway. But Biblo is also an incredibly good example in terms of David Mittossel, who's the leader of that library, just asked himself, what do these youngsters in this area need? And then he also says, so I gave them what they need, and I gave them what they didn't have. He also said that he also gave them what they didn't know enough to ask for. So there's something to be said about not being, just being kept hostage to what you're told as well. But what do you really sort of? I think that also what's quite bold about this project is that it takes, it asks the big questions. What are libraries for? What are they? What need does it actually fulfill? And it is this idea that they do need knowledge, they do need skills. They're not just normally you think of them as carriers of books, but the books are there because they are, connections to knowledge that they actually need to grow as people and to. And one of the things that they wanted to teach the youngsters was how to cook. Because when you learn to cook in school, you are just you're trying to impress. You're being graded. And when you cook at home, you're just being shouted at if you don't do it. So, but you take that experience and you place it out in the library thinking that you need to learn to do this just for yourself, just for the joy of it, just for the pleasure of it, and not just in case you're very hungry coming to the library after school. So there's like sort of there's this workstation that's just about, giving people the knowledge of how to make food, which I think is just absolutely great. My son loves this. This is his favourite part of that library. Also, the library that's built for the grown-ups, just up, because this biblo is forbidden for grown-ups. That's one of the needs they tell. They want to be on their own. They don't want to be around grown-ups. So they made it so that it's what is it, 5 to 15, isn't it? 10 to 15. That's the so you have sort of a membership card, and that's if you can prove that you are between the age of 10 to 15. So, and there's like this grown-up circle. There's these markings on the floor where grown-ups are not allowed to step over, apart from the people who work there. That is. And the library for the grown-ups there is a bit further up. It does have a lot of the same thinking there, because I think there's a lot of libraries who does this now, that just say you have a membership card and you can go in also when people don't work there. Especially in the weekend, this is a really well-used, informal place for people to work. A lot of very ambitious young people meet up to do schoolwork on the Sunday. I was like, wow, they have changed, but that's not the way it was when I was a kid. So I was like, but yeah, they do really use this as a workspace for everyone in that community. It's very well impressive. But again, it asks the audience what you need, and the answer comes back, I need it to be open when I need it, So, and then again. And thirdly, there's this example from South Africa. This is a museum called District 6. It's a museum to set up. Do you know it? Yeah. Does anyone know it? Yeah.
Yeah. Been there. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you? Oh wow.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, I think. So. Yes.
So did you meet Benita Bennett?
No, I was just on holiday there, so
wow.
I didn't. No, I just looked at the exhibition, and it was very impressive.
Yeah,
very good initiative.
It's also I think again, the thinking underneath it is just something that's so impressive. One of the things that she wanted to talk about was because I heard a lecture of her talking about this like a couple of weeks back. And one of the things she talked about was that she didn't want to build monuments. Because monuments have this tendency to close history instead of like keeping it alive. I'm not sure if you agree with you, but that's with her there over at Porto. But it's like there's that idea that she wanted to make events rather, so that could be a way to commemorate different histories. And District 6 has a really interesting story, because this was a part of Cape Town that really was multicultural, and it was very successful, which you can imagine, for a government that relied solely on multiculturalism as a dystopia. It was a really pain in their ass, because there was a multicultural society living and thriving. There was like a lot of people coming in from all kinds of backgrounds, like Europeans, Africans, having the most solid district in Cape Town. So what they decided was to uproot that and then to make it into a white neighbourhood. They could do, that was what apartheid was about. People were supposed to live apart. That's what is in the name as well. But then when apartheid was abolished, they decided to set up a museum in order to remember what District 6 was once about. So, and it was like, and one of the things that they make a whole set of programs, and there was like one program that again impressed me very much, because what they found when they spoke to younger people, a person born in South Africa after 1994, do you know what they're called? Yeah, born frees. They're born free. And one of the challenges they had for the born frees is they didn't get apartheid. It's like, so they have this whole institution set up to commemorate apartheid, and people say, what? And there was something about, instead of like sort of trying to bypass that, they just treated that as as something that they should address in a separate program. So what they did was to invite people in the 26th of April, young people to sleep over in the museum, light up the museum. And they sort of they relived the end of apartheid. So on the 26th, when the youngsters came, they were given racial identities, and they were like given the restrictions and the possibilities that were given, like followed naturally to those racial categories. And then they slept over, and on the night after, they experienced 27th of April, 1994, which is the day of the first election. So, and like the day when, you know, the dam bursts and there was freedom in South Africa. And then they could sort of actually see the difference in the role playing. So they can actually sort of live it themselves. I just think that it's like, I'm not sure if it fits really into the category of outreach, but I just find it quite bold in terms of thinking that, right, we have one issue, getting past these thoughts, and then we build a program just for that. So, and really beautiful as well. This is from the 27th of 1994, first day of election. So, and she's brought her little one with her as well, just you know, to experience it as well. So this is my summary then. When you do outreach, you should also use this as an artistic potential and be loyal to the purpose of what your institution is set up to be. Because I think that often, sometimes when we go out and we talk, when we think about outreach, we somehow think that we should abandon yourself. I think we should never do that. We should be exactly what we are in, you know, when we meet others. Might be really obvious, but I mean, it's a rookie mistake that you forget what you're actually there for. When you find the needs of the audiences that you try to reach out to, and use their feedback to strengthen your artistic ambitions. You know, your programming, your whatever it is, because you can use it to really emphasise what you're about. It's a creative potential. When you leave your institutions, you are free to actually make up yourself anew. So why waste the opportunity?
No.
Sorry, it's in the book, I think. No, it's not in the book. Right. Be loyal to your purpose, audience's needs, and use it to strengthen your artistic potential. I was so happy after put that into graphics. Like, you can imagine, spend time doing that. Yeah, you happy? So this is the one that you also find there. And then I want you to find one partner, the one person sitting closest to you. I want you to start working together and describing the project that you start to envision. And also try to use these ideas as well. Like how can you use this work to create artistic.
Okay, I feel bad about interrupting your great discussion because I'm also going to talk about something very negative and sad and yeah, so why not just interrupt you all? So I am the chosen friend that will talk about possible hurdles. And I will tell you something about my background so that you can understand, and also so you can tell me that this view or these experiences that I've had is not what you have, or these are exactly what you have, or some of them are. So my name is Ellen Fodstad, and I've been working with visual art for 15 years as a project manager in Reykjavik for the Nordic House in Iceland, and with big festivals and exhibitions. And then I worked with Art in Schools, a Norwegian organization for the right of visual art in school, both in subjects and also the place on the curriculum. Then the last 6 years I was head of education at the Henny Onsdag Art Center, where you're going to be tomorrow, some of you, which is a big contemporary art center that has had exhibitions by Kusama and other big artists, but also small exhibitions or more alternative or less reached exhibitions. And today I work at Public Art Norway, which is a funded, it's under the Cultural Department of Norway, and we have every building in Norway that is built as an efficient building has to use 1.5% of their building expenses to art. And if you have seen the Norwegian Opera House, that 1.5% is 30 million Norwegian kroners, which I don't know what is in euro today, but I will maybe find out if somebody wants to know. So I work with art. We have a collection of 7,000 works all over Norway, outside and indoors. Prisons, hospitals, schools, but also parks and alleys and on the tube station. My experience is what I'm going to talk about, not where I work today, but my 15-year meeting with some hurdles, which I usually try to meet with enthusiasm and a smile, but might not always work. The reason that I'm here is that I've written a big, I wrote in the biggest cultural newspaper in Norway a little heartfelt piece about that we cannot afford snobbery when we make exhibitions and when we work with art for everyone from the age of 0 to the age of 95. We cannot make exhibitions and art projects that we are just making for our friends and colleagues and a close circle. We have to reach out more and make dialogue more, and also before the production of the exhibition starts, we have to start working with this, not that the mediation education department comes in when it's all finished. That's not, when it's finished I say, but that's when the exhibition opens. People tend to let the education department come in then. But that's not how it should be for me. That's my... And a lot of other, a little heartfelt, and it got a lot of attention and a lot of criticism, but also a lot of, hugs and,
And an invite.
And invite to speak here with TrAP. Let's talk about the internal challenges that I've met for the last years working. And you might not feel the same way at all. I mean, you are from so many different places and work with different things. But my big challenge has been, for example, when we work with texts in exhibitions, the curator or the artist would not like us to come in and say, nobody understands this. Maybe just 5% understands what it says here on the wall. And when they come in, they will read this and they will feel stupid and they will remember feeling stupid and they want to walk away. So that's been a problem that I've met, trying to get into the exhibition text, the wall text, the catalogue text, to be inclusive. That I talked about already, that I don't know if any of you here have experienced this, that you are not included from the start of any project? Mm-hmm. Who has not experienced this?
Once!
Hey.
But I paid for it all.
Okay. So we had 2 hands. Okay.
Once.
Once.
In 18 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a possible hurdle. I mean, for me, when I worked, for example, with big exhibitions, it's my job as head of education to also pass on information to all the guides and all the guards and everyone at the reception, at the shop, and everyone that meets the audience. So if I'm not included from the start, or if I get a book the day before the opening, or if I get some Xerox papers very late, it's very hard to build that enthusiasm and knowledge for that exhibition on all the other stages. So, that's an internal challenge. I'm not giving any solutions, that's my fun job. But I wore a red jacket, so I didn't want to be all black, What I've experienced, this is also based on, because I have a lot of friends who works in art museums, not only in Norway, but internationally. And we have talked about this. So these are also things that I've heard from other people. Especially maybe this one as well. Why do not people in institutions working with culture have a together feeling, like a we we are doing this together. Why is that not how it is? So if anyone can answer, or if anyone feels this is wrong, that you at your institution have that, yes, let's do this together. Anyone? Wow. This is sweet.
What did anyone
ask?
What did you ask?
Yeah, what did I ask you? Where you work,
Yes.
is it a feeling of coming together, like making, for example, an exhibition? Is it like a we feeling, like we made this together, this exhibition, like we are a team? Do you have that where you work? Or do you have different departments doing different things and people maybe not wanting to share?
There is both.
Both?
Because I'm working in the big institution with 400, 500 employees.
Oh.
So it's very big. In my case, I work in a creative center, and I think a lot about this because I'm also a choreographer and I do my career around the world at the same time that I have this responsibility. And this gets to a very important point because this is connected not with this field in particular, but how to be a human being.
Mm.
And the basis to be a human being in 2 legs, or not in 4, not because you have this shape that you become a humanistic being. You know? So you have to think about confidence, and it's not so much about this kind of work, it's so much about you trust in what you do,
Yeah.
you give value to your own life.
Yeah.
Because if you don't give value to what you do and to yourself, it's very difficult to trust in somebody else.
Yeah.
So that's we should think about this in a more deeper.
Yeah.
And this is the problem of our society in the moment, is because people are trained to think me.
Yeah.
So when you go to the places, what happens is you try to imprint your me.
Yeah.
And then it's very difficult to make others to be with you, because you don't think about the other things.
Yeah.
You just want to do it.
But how do you know if you do it the best possible way for the institution if you don't discuss it? Like if you don't have like a group talk, you don't get any input.
Yeah, but what is the reality of our days? It's a big problem. So I think this has to do with you yourself. You have to accomplish yourself and put your ego inside and try to share with the others.
And there are some egos.
And this makes this. We do this together.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to explain. I work at the Center for Contemporary Culture in Barcelona, and we do one of the things we do is temporary exhibitions, so we produce ourselves, and we do sort of complicated exhibitions. Now we have one exhibition that's called After the End of the World. It's about climate change, and 2 years ago we started with the exhibition department, came over, and the director of the center and everything. They came over to all the departments of the center, said, well, we want to do this together and get the ideas and get everything. But then at one point, we started all working together, but then at one point, the exhibitions department started to go off on their own because they started to get into the actual exhibition, which is more complicated, all the details and working with all the artists and everything. That was very complicated, so they started sort of shifting off.
Yeah.
And then some of the other departments started doing other things around this project. So we started doing this together, but then after a while it became all this. So I had to get into the, it's
hard.
It's hard to do it.
It's hard to do it, and also when it's time pressure and everyone feels overworked and everyone wants to have information before and not knowing who has the right information, who has the relevant information, and and this is just my opinion and other people's opinion. They're not here. some insist on having that power. Some uses that power. Because they have the information and they will not let you into it before, so you can maybe have your input. And also, what I've experienced a lot is you don't speak the same language. I'm very concerned with that we should have a text in an exhibition, for example, or about an art piece that connects both to people that know the artist really well, maybe their best friend, their family member, and also give that to somebody that has never heard about this artist before, and in between there, how can you make that happen? That's a real challenge, and that's a bigger challenge for me than just writing to, your colleagues that you respect, and it's a bigger challenge to write to all these people together. So
it's not only about language; it's about different views.
it is. It's different fields and power and hierarchy.
Different audiences.
Different
also.
audiences. So it's a great challenge. So I'm happy to talk about this now. But this is a piece that we have at Public Art in Kristiansand, and it's just as javel, what to do, javel. So I just wanted to give you a pause before I go over to. I'm not talking about young audiences here. I'm talking about everyone. So because of that, I've worked a lot in art institutions, and I've always been on call whenever a guide or anybody's sick. I go in and I do the tour, and I meet a lot of audiences. And this is I've chosen here things that they've said to me the most. So this is the external challenges. We not only have the internal difficulties, but we also have the I do not know anything about this. I don't even think that this place is for me. Why should I come? So contemporary art is not for me. I do not know anything about it. Some of these people have experienced that they come in and nobody looks up, and they see a text they don't understand, they see art they don't understand, and they remember this. A lot of people feel that it is it's not relevant in their life. I do not understand what the artist wants and believes. I think it's snobbish, something for a closed group. The texts are written as factual information with language I do not understand. But here I put a picture from, this is the text to Ai Weiwei's art piece on the wall, which, this is the Norwegian, this is the English one, they made it shorter, I don't know why. This is from Astrup Fearnley in Oslo. I had a hard time reading this, you know why? Because I have my kids with me. And wall texts aren't for like when you have Norwegians come to art museums. They've done research on this with their family. It's a family like gathering, like we do something social together. Rarely do they go alone. I know that Englishmen and Frenchmen go more alone. Actually, with the research they've figured this out. But here at Astrup Fearnley they have people that you can talk to instead. So I want to ask you, who do you want to talk to them? Or do you go up and ask people? Or do you read text? What should we do there? That's a possibility. The art is often about an individual. It says little about the society we live in. The texts are written as factual information with language that I do not understand. So that's again, I always felt bored when the class was at the museum. I've heard that a lot, and that's for a lot of people. We think that we who work in the cultural field think that people go to museums as much as we do, and they don't. And these are my kids. and a lot of people, that's their first meeting with a museum, with their class. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up. I'm just gonna show some pictures that all hope is not lost. And then I'm gonna ask you to, Hilda, you can introduce the next task, and I'm sorry that I made you depressed. But was there anything that if you missed something, please say that also. Like, yeah.
So what do you think is the challenge? Do we have to? No, I'm serious about, because we are always thinking, and we used to think in we have to educate these people, or we have to explain better.
Yeah.
The other fact is that we don't program for them.
Yeah.
And we have to bring that in the discussion as well.
Yeah. I think actually programs that actually bridge that feeling of being totally lost in the institution would actually be a good idea.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's very much what Keys to the City is about, actually. That project is very much about making sure that there are stories there in the museums represented that are, relevant to...
It resonates with their experiences. Yeah.
There's one thing I miss, and that is because the world is getting, and museums are getting more and more professional, and you have a lot of professions.
Yeah.
So where is the respect for the other, not the curator professions, right?
Yeah.
And that goes to the whole thing that you are talking about, because the curators think they know how to communicate, they know how to market, they know how to do everything, basically. So why we're there is a big question, and this is just shocking. It's a shocking view of your co-workers, and this is also a management problem. And the cultural field needs better managers, and that was my fire escape.
Absolutely. I really like that feeling of that this is beginning to become a support group. I actually think we should build on that. But then we are, of course, way behind schedule. It's like working in the cultural sector, as we tend to be. But we have a bit of, because after this there's a 30 minutes break, and I wonder if we could take 15-20 minutes of it, and then we can sort of try and run the program as we sort of thought. I just wondered, because when you work together in groups, I just wondered if it would be a good idea if you went into that room, so that you just because in this part you will all talk to each other around the table, and it will be a bit tougher for you to hear each other when you're going to engage around an entire table. So I thought that maybe you could go into that room, and then you lot could go in to that room. I'll guide you, and then you lot could go out, and I'll put some chairs, some black chairs and tables for you. What you're going to work with now is that you're going to work together as a group of 6, and you're going to help each other. This is basically the support group section of it. You're going to help each other to overcome the hurdles, the possible resistance you might meet, either inside your institutions or outside. So good luck. And also, can I just, I forgot to tell you, can I just remind you, because when you've done that for 30 minutes, I'm going to regroup you, and you're going to do a quick recap of all the ideas. You're going to meet someone, a representative for all the other tables. So you have the responsibility to give an account, you're going to write down all the ideas that was on your table in order to give it on. Did you understand that?
Everyone from every table, or one from every table.
Take care.